This is just an overview for information only. We're not trying to replace any part of, the loss mitigation department at XYZ company, not trying to do any of that. It's just more for your information, and maybe it'll help you better counsel borrowers. I've gotten some feedback in the past that it's not very helpful because a lot of times the borrower doesn't know what kind of loan they have, so you don't know what kind of loan they have. But in the situations that you do know, hopefully you'll find this helpful. It's accurate as of today. If all the investors decide tomorrow morning to change their guidelines, it becomes not accurate. So just know that. I just want to explain how it's set up. Each page you have the type of loan and then the specific workout, and then in the text the definition from that investor's guidelines as to how they define that workout, okay? And then the requirements that are set forth by that investor, okay? And you'll note here, minimum of 3 payments past due. So we talked earlier about that, and that's where you'll see that it is in their guidelines, okay? I'm going to move through to Freddie Mac. You heard Joe mention earlier, VA, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. My understanding is that most of the time you don't get a lot of VA borrowers because they go to the VA for their counseling and for their discussions most of the time. VA has been a little bit slower to get on the loss mitigation bandwagon relative to document reduction and so forth. It can be very difficult to do a modification on a VA loan. They're just, other than repayment plans and short sales, there aren't a lot of workouts going on VA loans because of those nuances. And because you don't see a lot of them, I choose to not spend a lot of time on them. If I hear otherwise from you, I'd be happy to spend a little bit more time on them, but probably for now we'll just move on. But now I'm really going to skip forward to Freddie Mac. You heard Joe mention earlier that sometimes the reason for default can be very key relative to voluntary or involuntary. The reality is most of the investors, I won't say that the reason for default doesn't matter, because that's not true. We want to know, every servicer will want to know if they're going to consider a workout for a borrower, what caused the borrower to fall behind, okay? Just understand most of the time that reason, even if it was kind of silly, won't preclude the borrower from getting a workout, okay? So my example of the teacher that took her pay over 9 months because she was just going to get a job during the summer, chose not to get a job, and then the second time around chose not to get a job again, okay? She still might get a workout, even though that was a voluntary thing. The exception, and the only exception that I'm aware of, is Freddie Mac. In order to qualify for a workout, a retention option on a Freddie Mac loan, there must be an involuntary inability to pay. This means the borrower must not have voluntarily walked into something that caused them to fall behind, okay? Those of you that's been in my training classes before, you've heard me cite this example, but I really think it does a good job of explaining it. And that is what I affectionately refer to as Motorcycle Man. He bought a new build home, it was his dream home, and after 2 years decided he needed to buy a motorcycle. He didn't have the cash available to pay for it outright, so he financed it with a pretty high interest rate. So I don't recall now if his consumer debt had gotten a bit out of control and that's what caused the high interest rate, or maybe just motorcycle financing is more expensive than auto financing, I don't know. After he got the motorcycle, he found out that his automobile insurance coverage did not extend to the motorcycle. So he then had to get a motorcycle insurance policy. When you add it all a month as to how much he was spending on this motorcycle now, it was like a $700 increase in his monthly spending. And what ended up happening is he fell behind in his mortgage. When he came to my department, and I was managing the Freddie Mac process at that point, I want to say he was 3 or 4 payments past due at that point, had applied for loss mitigation, and my negotiator